Everyone, I'm delighted to introduce Gill Bennett. Gill, welcome to the Power of the New podcast. It's lovely to have you here.
Hello. Thank you for
Hello.
having me.
You're very welcome. I just wanted to say to the listeners, Jill made a massive impact on me when I first met her, and I think it was, just kind of not even meeting her face to face, but it was just like during lockdown, and when I met Jill, which was at News UK because I was doing some work there as well, she was on strike from her job.
I
And
was.
I love that. And you know what?
I
I
love that that's
admired
our,
her.
I love that our story begins with me on strike. I love that that's the start of our story.
Do you know what though? It was so admirable because I know that you weren't happy with some changes that went on or in the role. So you were doing a job. You weren't like actually not doing a job. You were doing a job. But we know that you are a superwoman when it comes to delivery. And so you're just doing what was meant of you. But what I've seen since then and from now, like 2 years later, is incredible. Like your journey is just amazing and what you've achieved. And I know that you have, it's not been easy for you. And I know that things have been easy for you, and that's why I was so excited for you to be on the show, because I think it's really important for people to hear you, understand your journey, because I really think you'll be able to inspire others so well.
I find it funny because, as you say, like, my journey hasn't been easy. I don't think anyone's journey has been easy. I do have people say to me, like, because obviously I don't talk about everything that's happened,
Mm,
particularly because sometimes I don't see it as it was a hurdle. I just go, oh, that was just a thing that I had to deal with, and you just kind of carry on. But then obviously a situation comes up, like at a Women in Tech event, for example, we had recently, and obviously I mentioned something and said, and I gave a clear example of where I'd hit that. And if someone would turn around and say to me, you could write a book, Jill, because I swear you are like the most resilient person. You just seem to constantly hit all these hurdles. And I'm like, yeah, but I think everybody has that in different ways for different reasons.
they do, and we manage it in different ways, right? Like we have certain tools, techniques that we are able to use, that we learn from others, that we've had from childhood, whatever it is. But so tell me, let's go back to when I met you or before I met you,
Yeah.
because we were in lockdown, basically. Like, can you sort of share, where you were in terms of your mental health back then?
So if we're going back to just before lockdown, I actually really wasn't in the best of places. It was probably one of the I've been in dark places like that before, but that was one of the more rarer times where it actually was in a really, really bad way. So much so that I remember the Thursday before the announcement of telling us to stay home. I came home Thursday night and I actually cleared out my desk and I brought my plant home because I had a plant on my desk. I literally brought everything home. Partly, I think, because I knew that we were going to be heading into being told to stay home, and being a project manager in delivery, I'm always like thinking
Absolutely.
ahead. And, my response was like, oh, let's just prepare casually. And then that way, when it's announced, like, I'm prepared, you know. But also, I do know that I really just couldn't go into the office anymore. And I remember Friday, I didn't sleep at all Thursday night, and Friday I just really was at home. I basically said, I can't come in because of some emergency, and really it just
Mm.
was because I literally could not leave the house anymore. And because we had planned, like Monday I was going to work from home anyway. Tuesday we'd planned as a whole team to work from home just to test it, because again we all kind of felt we were heading into lockdown. And Monday night so in my head I was like, I have until Wednesday to get myself together to to get to be able to get back into the office. And Monday night, when the government announced that we had to stay at home, um, I know a lot of people were really stressed about it, and I totally can understand that. Like, again, even for me, being a lockdown wasn't easy, but I remember for me on a personal level, like, I was so relieved. I was relieved that someone told me I did not have to leave my
Yeah.
house. Like,
But
I like
that's
the
really
idea of doing
significant,
it.
isn't it? That is really, it's like a, I mean, most people are like, oh my gosh, like I don't want to go into lockdown. And you
Yeah.
were like feeling that you wanted to. But what was the what was a build up before then? Like, was it like, did you see sort of red flags and things happening
Yeah,
in your
there were.
life?
I would say there were flags the years before. Like for me, my mental health journey and or understanding my own mental health started when I first moved to the UK, which was when I was 24, and that was 11 years ago. Like, and before then, mental health wasn't even a term or a thing that was used, to describe anxiety or depression. I kind of knew of those things, but whenever you heard mental health, you thought of people with schizophrenia or they were, Batman's mental health, mental
Yeah.
asylum and all that. So you never really associated it as something that you yourself could be dealing with, because how it's presented in the media and the public, it's something that's so significant that literally your brain's just fractured and you are no longer who you are. So for me, my mental health journey started when I first moved to the UK and joined the BBC, and I started being introduced to things, and they started having mental health talks, and that started to kind of expose to me as a person of going, oh, well, I remember feeling like that, and well, maybe actually, and I was able to start labeling ineffectively, oh, I had depression as a teenager. Oh, I have severe anxiety, like, oh,
Mm.
that's what that pain in that chest is. It's not like having a heart attack. It's just me absolutely panicking. So for me, it definitely was such a huge help in just being able to identify then when I was feeling a certain way. And then it meant I could talk about it. Like I know mental health, particularly back then, 10 years ago even, it was still a bit of a taboo thing to be open about your feelings and how you're feeling. But I never really had too much of a problem, at least stating the label or stating
Mm.
that, I oh yeah, it's my anxiety. Even yesterday I was in a class, and we were going around the room saying how we're all feeling, and I started off with saying, well, my best friend, my anxiety came to me Wednesday night, and it's still hanging around. Like
So
I
you're
don't.
talking about it, right? Like
Yeah,
being able
yeah,
to,
and I don't have that problem talking
no.
about, and
But
I
is
don't talk
it,
about what it is.
no, but was it because we know both the BBC is very open. They do, they're very supportive, very inclusive. But was it because of the culture that you're in that you're able to talk about your mental health?
Yes and no. I think, over time you get easier a bit as well. And again, it depends on who you're around. Like, I wouldn't say I talk to everybody at work about it, even in my new job. Like, there's a very open community around all that stuff, and we very much take all of that into consideration. But, even then I'm still quite careful. Like I remember when I did the Silicon Roundabout talk in 2021, and obviously I talked about how I was feeling. That's probably the first open public where I really talked about how I was feeling going into lockdown. And there were people who were in my team, who
Mm.
came to that talk, and at the end it came to me and said, we had no idea that you were feeling the way you were feeling going into lockdown. Like they had no idea that I just, like the 3 or 4 years before it had been just slowly building up, with all these things, and just to the point where nothing I could do was helping me
Mm.
to get out of that hole. And that's the other thing. Like I know a lot of people struggle to do that, and I'm no different. But I'm also someone who's just like don't want to be defeated by it. But I get really frustrated where I go, okay, I'm just going to let myself feel, and I'll feel sad, or I'll lay on the couch for 3 weeks and go, yeah, we're just going to ride that wave. And then I get really frustrated because I just go, I just don't want to feel this way. You know what I mean? I just want to feel like I can get on
Can you
with
sort of
it.
describe the feeling? So some people say, I feel this way, or they just can't put their finger on it about what they're feeling. What was it that you were actually feeling? What are the physical symptoms? What
So,
were you
so
thinking?
yeah, like for me, particularly going into lockdown as well, by that point, the physicality of my mental health was really impacting me as well. Like, and I know you and I have talked about this a lot, is
Mm.
that the mental health and your physical health are practically married. Like, the one impacts the other. So like I've learned that when I'm anxious, I don't eat, but when I'm depressed, me and fast food have a love affair like no other.
Bring it on, baby.
And I actually put on a lot of weight in the 3 or 4 years leading up to lockdown, which when I looked back, at how much, at what I was eating, I'm like, oh yeah, really can recognize. And actually, because I can recognize that now, when I have those cravings, or if I'm feeling sad and I then get those cravings, I'm like, I know what that is, and then I kind of know what I need to do to mitigate that or I have my tools, so to speak, to try and, work through all of that. But I know a few months before lockdown, I got really bad acid reflux. And then actually when we went into lockdown, nothing I was doing was helping. And I actually needed to get a camera down my throat. But obviously, as soon as that was all being planned, we went into lockdown, and obviously the NHS and the health service overall was obviously heavily impacted by something far more important than me having reflux.
How dare they?
and I had to wait 18 months. And so that meant then I had to do all these other things. Like I went on a autoimmune protocol diet where I literally just removed everything and just had like very basic food for 3 months just to try and help it settle. I still was taking some medication that I was allowed to take just to try and help it. I slept with my bed not horizontally up, like on an angle, just so that way. I remember that when we went into lockdown, actually, I don't know if I told you this, when we went into lockdown, the first month and a half, I slept in the recliner in the lounge room because it was so bad that that was where I had to sleep. And the only reason I then moved back to my bed was because one morning I got up and I put my right foot down, was fine. And then when I put my left foot down, I nearly fell over. And it was because I'd slept such on a weird angle that I'd pinched clearly the nerve ending in my back that stopped all the blood flow to my leg. So that's why when I stood up, obviously there was no feeling, and it just went. And then obviously once it came, and then I went, all right, I need to find a better solution for this. And obviously, as I said, I always say to people, I became the unofficial ambassador for Gaviscon. Like I literally just lived through Gaviscon, just trying to mitigate that. And I did eventually go to the doctors, and by that point it was still a problem. But I think because I'd spent 18 months doing all of this other stuff, just physically trying to help mitigate it and make it better. It wasn't as. He was like, "Oh, everything looks great," but you could still see some of the remnants still there on within in my stomach, and so we took some other stuff. But even then, like it's come back in the last 3 weeks. But again, because I just know, I just have to deal with it.
Yeah. So can you see a sort of a clear link between your anxiety, your stress, and your physical symptoms? Then, like,
I think because I've spent lockdown, particularly because you're on your own. And you just are so much more aware of because you're not interacting with other people so much. And I do live on my own. So obviously I had to basically reacquaint myself with myself in a lot of ways. Like it's not like I could escape it. I just became so well attuned to my body in effect. And, when I felt something, I'd go, okay, I'm noticing I'm doing like laying on the couch, and I could see my physicality is behaving this way. Okay, I think it's something to do with this. And then sometimes I can figure out, oh yeah, I know exactly what's triggered that. It's a conversation, or I've got to do a big thing that I don't want to do, and that's really worrying me. Or sometimes I literally just don't know. Sometimes it just, it will just, like, it could be just all these little things. And it just, the last little thing that, even though it's only a little thing on top of all the other little, like, it's like lining up all these like 1 and 2 pennies, and it's so fragile that it's just one thing's too many's knocked it off and I've not realized. So it is quite a thing to have to be so aware of.
I think, it's interesting because, when I hear you speak and I see you present and be creative and that sort of stuff, like you wouldn't think at all that you have any anxiety because you present yourself so well. So how does that happen? Because like I know that you get anxious and nervous. How do you like get through that to kind of like do what you do?
It's so funny because obviously at work in my latest job now, I have to like facilitate these 2-day events with like 130 plus people, and there's anyone from the execs below, and that in itself is all new and weird. And my manager's amazing. She'll message me throughout the day and check in if I'm doing okay. And I remember the last time I said, I was like, I know I sound so calm and collected. And I don't understand how, because on the inside I am dying very, very slowly. And it is exhausting. I know that, like, how I don't I'm slowly more and more understanding how I kind of approach that sort of stuff. I know the more you do it, the easier it gets, and also who you're with. Depending on who you're with, also I think impacts, or how many people impacts for me as well. I know the more people there are, the more anxious I'm or worried about it all. But I know, like, so in high school I did 5 years of drama, mainly to help me with my confidence and understanding, just being able to stand on a stage and speak. My mum's even said to me, one of the things that she found with me doing drama as well was that it helped me learn to just speak more clearly and articulate, because obviously you were kind of forced into that as well, which was really good. And yeah, I had no intentions of doing it. Like, it was a creative thing. As you know, I'm a very, very creative person. That's like my thing that keeps me going. But one of the things I've noticed that I've taken from doing all of that, and I don't think this is what they wanted to teach me, but this is clearly how I've built it into myself, is, aside from my leg going a million miles an hour and me not realizing, because that's where the anxiety goes.
I've experienced that, by the way. Like, I get like motion sickness next to me.
And you should have seen it when I did Silicon Roundabout, because I literally made one of them nauseous, I think, because both were going. I was so nervous and anxious about doing it. But what happens is generally I think when I have more control, when my mental health is in a good state, and obviously it gets worse when my mental health isn't really there. But if my mental health is in a good state, the anxiety is still there, but I've clearly put it in this very tight box, and I'm using all my energy to hold it there. And then what that means is that I come in and I then just do it. And what seems to happen is it's like I close my eyes, take a breath, and then as soon as I open my eyes, it's like some switch in my head is flicked, and I'll do what I need to do. But then at the end of it, because I've been holding that box really hard, and I've switched off my brain and just gone into autopilot, so to speak, and done what I needed to present or talk about, I then absolutely collapse at the end, and I'm really exhausted. So not only am I, I've released all that tension, and then I realize, that's when I go, I was more anxious than I realized, because I was controlling myself so much. And then when because I don't remember what I've talked about in anything, I have to go around and say to people, was that okay? And it's not because I don't think it wasn't like I'm worried about it, but I literally don't remember. I've literally got a black hole where all of that just goes. And it's like I clearly turn into someone else and just power through it.
It sounds like you emotionally, how to emotionally regulate yourself before you go into something, right? So you're able to so make yourself calm, you put yourself into a box, but ultimately you hold yourself so much that you just sort of disintegrate afterwards.
And that's why I get so tired.
Yeah, exactly. But does it get looking forwards, does it get any easier? Are you able to, what could you do more of, maybe to make that less?
So I would say, depending on what it is, and that's why I also stress it depends on your mental health overall. I've noticed that if my mental health's in a better state, I cope a lot better with the fallout afterwards, because I'm just more aware. It also is depending on what you're talking about. So if I'm doing the same thing over and over, each time does get easier. I'm still tired, I'm still exhausted, I'm still doing all of those things, but it is, I think, because you've done it before, you go, I've done this before. I know what I'm doing. You start to get those little combative reinforcements that you need to knock away that inner critic in your head that's telling you that you can't do it. And again, because you're doing it more, I'm exercising, in effect, those commands that I've set up, in effect, to cope with all of that. So if I know I'm going into talk, next week, I've got 3 things I've got to speak at, but and I think each one will get easier by the Friday, because I'll have literally done it every day, meaning I've exercised those commands that I've set up to kind of be able to just go in and do it. So, I've always found, even in the past, when I've started something, it's been really, really nerve-wracking, and it's just so, you really beat yourself up afterwards. But the more you do it, the easier it is. And it's also partly why I challenge myself quite a lot to try new things and do new things, because I want to keep pushing that boundary. Because also, if I push myself into newer things that I haven't done at all, then the things that I have done off and on, you know, I go, well, if I've managed to go off and do that thing that I've never tried and I've been okay at it, well, then that should be a piece of cake. So that's another thing like that. Those are the ways that I kind of try and help, you know, make it easier or cope with it. It's still there. Like, I can't say it ever leaves.
Right.
You know, it is still, you know, that's why I call my anxiety my best friend, because it will never leave, as much as I don't want it here. But yeah, it's just down to how you cope, really.
Absolutely. And so do you, I mean, you have your own sort of internal tools and techniques that you use. Are there any sort of external sources or resources that you use to help you manage your anxiety?
So music is the, music saves my soul.
100%.
Even as a kid, music was my savior. And actually, one of the things I was talking about this with someone the other day, because as you know, I do a lot of writing, creative writing, and I have a lot of stories that I want to write, put out there. And I know I've always said I wanted to be a writer, but actually I think what I've always wanted to be is a storyteller, because when I was a teenager and I was depressed and I wasn't, you know, I would lay on my bed for hours. But I wasn't one of those people who sat down and escaped by reading or writing these stories. I literally would just go into my head and my imagination and just create these worlds that I would live in. And, you know, didn't matter what it was, you know, it could be anything. It could be something very close to reality. And it could be something I've seen on the news and I've just put myself in there, you know, and changed the narrative and seen where that goes. Or it could be something completely, you know, out of this world that was unexpected. And between that and music, like, I know one of probably the first early signs that I've always picked up on knowing when I'm not happy is the type of music I'm listening to. You know, I love listening to new music. I love all that sort of stuff. But if I switch to something really piano or sad or, you know, just melancholy, like, that tells me how I was feeling. And even like when I've been happy and joyful, like, there are songs that are tied to events in my life. So when I hear that song, it just takes me straight back to that moment, you know, of joy, which makes me really happy. And, you know, music's just soothes my soul, like, in no way that I can. So between, you know, my own imagination and music, like, that's kind of what I try and do before anything that I know I have to kind of face, because it just, like, even before this call, you probably, when I joined, you heard I had music on, and that
You
was
did.
me.
I was like, what's that? I was like looking at my computer. I was like, where's that music coming from?
That was me taking my 5 minutes to chill before we had this conversation.
But you know what? Actually, you've really, like, this is so significant, because, you know, I love talking about self-awareness, and self-awareness is key to recognize your own emotions, your thoughts, your feelings, right? It's really key to kind of be able to, the first step to manage yourself. But actually, what you're saying is that you're using music as part of your self-awareness, because you're understanding that if you're playing a certain type of music, then you might not be in the best state, right?
Yeah,
which I
and
think is amazing.
I have playlists that are called certain things for certain reasons. Like, the one I was listening to is more of my, like, waking up morning routine. And that one is particularly, it might not be something I play every morning, but, you know, whenever it is like my pump up, all positive reinforcement, you know, powerful people, women, whatever, just to kind of get me, you know, into that mindset of, like, yeah, I'm good, I am great, like, you know, that sort of thing. But again, there's other ones which are purely called piano songs. And they are I just need to chill. I need calm. You know, and yeah, so I have playlists literally for everything. I have language songs. I have a whole playlist purely of languages that are that sung in other languages. I don't even know what they're singing, but that just does something for me when I fall into that sort of.
It's a melody, isn't it? More than anything else, I think.
And there's also a beat.
The beat, yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, for me, music is my definitely my savior. The other thing I also do, which I think helps more with my brain, because I have a short attention span, because I I joke with a friend that I have about 9 screens in my head, because I could talk to him and I could be like, go from like, I can't believe that happened. Oh, did you see that? Oh, I'm so sad about that. I still can't believe, like, I can literally jump around to a ray of emotions in 5 minutes. And I say when I'm sick, I go to about 4 screens. But because I have so many screens going in my head, like it was when he pointed that out to me and I thought about it, I was like, well, that probably explains why I'm always so up and down, because I'm literally connected to all of these emotions in some way. And so what I try and do for that, particularly if I'm working on something that, requires a lot of energy and focus, because again, I really do struggle to focus, is I actually watch TV. I put like a film or a show on, even if it's something I've seen a million times over, like, because that just for some reason is a solid distraction, but not enough of a distraction to keep me from doing or achieving what I need to achieve. And I don't know why it works. It's just again, it's another thing that I have found for me and I think it's because, again, TV is another form of storytelling. Like, they're all stories, whether they're based on real life events or just absolutely creative, imaginative stories that I would never have thought of that, but I love going into those worlds.
Absolutely.
That just, again, it's just another form of storytelling that I is for me to escape to, that I can pretend to be a part of.
And I think that it's incredible that you use all these different things. And I know that you're very creative, although your sort of main role is delivery currently. Yeah. You've written children's books, you're doing courses, you are doing you do hospital radio, you do so many things. You create motion videos, like the list is endless.
I know. I've even been starting to think more about, because I do so many things, and obviously I would love to just do all of it full time. I equally am trying to decide on things that are things I'm happy to put out and would love if something happened with it. So like the children's books, I'm writing my own novel, all of, the stop motion video. I would love to get into doing more of that, like TV, film, all of that sort of stuff. But things like painting, which I got back into when we went into lockdown, because I had to entertain myself somehow. That painting for me, I think as much as I need to sell the artwork I've got, because I've got too much and I've got a small place and I'm running out of room, I think it will never be a thing that I will do as a job, so to speak. Like, it will never be something that I'm painting. Like, if someone wanted me to commission something, if that's what ends up happening, great, but it will never be like the full-time job. It will be always the hobby that's for me sort of thing. Like, that'll be for me. And then if I need to get rid of stuff, or I want to do something for someone, it's because I want to. It's not because I need to. Whereas because again, I'm well aware that, you do your passions that turn into a job. You still need that balance in effect, because otherwise you lose that passion for it. So for me, painting's going to be that thing, I think.
Absolutely. And it's like that's you're putting creative soul into it, right? You're putting all into it and having something beautiful come out of it.
It's the same with writing. Like, I'm writing my own online course, and, I'm writing all these stories. But actually what I've equally been doing is finding writing prompts, to just get my brain into thinking about something else. But I treat those writing prompts as a thing for me, because I'm not doing it to try and get it somewhere. Those writing prompts are like, let's just see what I can come up with. And, don't really care if people see it or not, don't care, it could turn into something which will be great. But like, again, I'm treating those as like, a thing for, like, I know one night I got really, really anxious and I could tell I was fidgety and agitated. And I just want to write something. And again, I went and found a writing prompt to follow, and, I wrote something out, and then I felt really better about it. So, again, that's another thing for me, creativity particularly. And I think that's why, again, music's so important, because it's another creative outlet.
Absolutely.
I really know that even my mum says it. She's like, if I'm not in a great place, she knows it's because I'm not having my creative outlet. And she even said to me in the few years leading up before lockdown, and I could tell things were not going great. She was like, are you being creative? And I went, no. I said, I do hospital radio, but that's not enough to fuel me. And she's just like, yeah, you're just not really doing any of that creative stuff. Whereas 2020 for me, 2021, like, probably were great, not just because I was at home and everyone was in the same boat and we couldn't do anything, but like, my creativity just went through the roof on everything that I could do. So you
It's
know,
been amazing, isn't it? Like
needing that outlet.
and having that space and time, I think, as well. Like I always, when people are in a spin or their inner critic is doing their head in and they can't get out of it, the best thing to do is distract yourself with something else,
Yeah.
especially music or art or dancing or whatever it is to take yourself out of that.
Yeah, and the thing I will say with distracting yourself, the one thing that frustrates me to no end, and I do have a step in if I have to deal with it, and this was the problem I had in before lockdown, was that, I could work all day, go to the office, try and distract myself, you'd put yourself in, the present, try and deal with everything, and then you'd come home, and then I would go to bed, and then it was like the inner therapist would come in and say, right, now that I've got your attention, let's talk about all the things that make you a horrible person. And then I would lay there all night listening to this voice going, will you just shut up? And then if I woke up at 3 a.m., I couldn't get back to sleep because it would just be like, oh, you're awake. Let's continue our conversation. And I'd just be like, will you go? And so then I go to work really tired because I hadn't slept very well. But then you'd be at work all day doing something and, and it could be a difficult day or it could not be a difficult day. And then I'd come home and then you think, right, well, I didn't sleep well last night, so hopefully I'm exhausted enough now. And again, I'd still wake up every night and listen to this voice. And it just became this vicious cycle that I couldn't get out of. So one of the things I in the end had to start, well, there were a few things I did. One was from, I think it was the end of 2019 or over that Christmas, New Year. Because again, I was someone who wants to not feel this way and wants to find those tools that will help me. One of the first thing I did was put my phone in the living room and not beside my bed anymore. Partly because if I woke up in the night, I'd check the clock to see what the time was. And if I then saw a message from my mum, because she's in Australia and obviously time difference, I would look at it. Next thing you know, you're falling down some rabbit hole of reading something. And that didn't help. So the first thing I did was I charged my phone in my living room. Now, for the first 2 weeks, it was really hard because obviously there's a habit.
Absolutely.
But after I've done that ever since. And, and if I'm even in a hotel room, I purposely will put my phone to charge away from the bedside table at least. So even though we're still in the same room, I have to get out of bed to see my phone. And that has done wonders to start off with. The second thing that I do is, I know a lot of people write daily journals, like whether it's in the morning or the evening. And I just don't do that. I find that really hard because even if I have been feeling stuff, to sit down and kind of write about it every day, like I just don't know how, it's just not something I go, well, it's all right day. Like most of the time I'm like, no, it's all right day. Like, I don't really feel anything to go into. However, when I do get to a point where I can't shut the inner voice in my head to go away, I do have a journal. And actually, the thing I found useful for me is that I write in that when nothing else works. So I can do all the other things I've set up to, like again, I don't go to bed until I am literally going to fall asleep. You know what I mean? I don't, because again, I want bed to be associated as you need to sleep, not to lay there. Because otherwise, again, you're associating your body with all of that, that's okay. So, I have all these, like, again, exercise. Okay, I'm not feeling great. I need to go for a walk, kind of get my body moving. If none of that works, if I still feel like I'm going to bed and I can still hear that voice going and it's not like my brain's just not shutting down, then I will write, because I go, that is when I know I'm going to eat. And none of it makes sense. I swear it's a page of.
But it doesn't matter,
sentence.
right? It doesn't matter, right? As long as you just get it out from your head to paper. Yeah.
You could reread all of that and you will just go, what on earth is she talking about? Because it literally jumps everywhere. But the fact is, it's like, well, I haven't solved the problem, but it's there. It's not here. It's there, and then it all of a sudden just feels better. And so I always say to people when they're writing, if they because they always talk to me about writing in the journals, and I go, it does work, but you've got to find what works for you. And for me, it works for me because it's my last defense in effect, because I have found it always works when nothing else I've done helps, so to speak. Yeah. So I literally keep that journal on my bedside table, and I could go months without writing in it, and then I could go 2 weeks in a row with writing in it. Like it does fluctuate.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, it's whatever works for you in that moment and that day. But you know what to do to make yourself feel better, which is the most important thing.
Yeah.
And I know with all your creative pursuits, the courses particularly, and I know that you love to add value to another person's life, right?
Yeah.
Like it's really important to you. I know that. So tell me, how through your writing, your courses, would you like to add value to someone else's life in terms of their well-being?
I my main driver is to always help people, which you've seen firsthand. Like I just can't not help people. I always want to help someone. And with what I do, like I know that even though I can do it in my job, I want to help as many people. Like I just feel like there's more I could do, and obviously I need to be aware of that, because I feel like that I could be an infinite number of people, that meaning I'll never reach that target of what I want. But I know with everything that I do, I want to just reassure people that that I'm exactly the same as you, and you know, and hopefully because I've just been open about it and I don't treat it as a taboo topic. You know, I've even seen in conferences and all that, people kind of get a bit shy when they mention it, and that's okay. Like they're clearly not ready. Whereas as you've seen with me, I just am very open about it. And it's because I go, well, if we're going to treat it like a normal thing, I'm going to treat it like a normal thing, and I will just say it, and you will just, you know, that's how we're rolling. But I then I always try and introduce like again, being creative, I try and introduce creative ways and games to help people recognize within themselves and the people around them what's like, how maybe someone's feeling or what's going on. Because instead of just saying it, people have their own journey. People have their own way of understanding things and how they get there. And I think if I can do it in a creative, fun way where it's not intruding on them feeling like they're sharing. Like I know when I did the mental health first aid course at the BBC, which was amazing, like doing a mental health first aid course, period, people should just do it. But obviously you're with a bunch of strangers and you're having to talk about, like when you're doing little group sessions, they want you to talk about things, and you don't have to talk about things, but you feel obligated, or you kind of like stress. And in a lot of ways that's great, because it makes you recognize within yourself like what you're okay with sharing. And, you know, maybe actually they've triggered something, you go, oh, that's actually a thing. But I want to do it in a safer way, I guess. And I want to remove yourself in effect, because sometimes removing yourself makes it easier to recognize. Because as you know, we all know, when you're in it, like if I knew what I knew now back when I was feeling the way I was feeling, like I would have probably done something sooner. But when you're in it, you just don't know. No. So to me, doing it in a creative way and trying to point out, you know, that language, like the words we use, can have that impact. If I can find a creative doing that, you know, identifying your unconscious bias, you know, how we all learn, all of those sorts of things. I just think if I can do it in a creative way where it's fun and exciting, but the penny will always drop and make you think about things internally within yourself, then I feel I've done what I've wanted to do in trying to, you know, bring that value into and helping people.
Yeah, and I honestly think the world is ready for Gill Bennett. Girl, you are ready to unleash into the world, because you are, like, honestly, like, I know you will make such a wonderful, beautiful impact on people and challenge people to think differently. And that's what's wonderful about this, right? Because you want to challenge people using language, for example. It's wonderful, right? To be able to do that. I think that's how people will learn. So I think that's amazing.
I think what I'm hoping what helps, because I'm like a lot, again, like even the course I'm building out, a lot of it is from my own frustration and experience, where I don't feel I've been given the benefit or the doubt or the understanding of who I am as a person. And I'm like, well, if I'm having this frustration on all of these things, someone somewhere is having this frustration on maybe one or two of these things or whatever. So, you know, again, like what I'm hoping with what I can achieve, it will, you know, again, challenge people in a way to recognize maybe how they've been doing stuff isn't exactly, you know, there's improvements there, or they could be a bit more mindful of. So
absolutely,
we'll see. I don't know if I'm ready for Gill Bennett, but
Don't worry, we got you. We got your back. We got you back. We're all the way there, right? So I'm so excited for the future for you, Jill, as well. But I have one last question for you. How do you find the power within you to manage your mental health now and safeguard it for the future?
So I think, weirdly, I've thought a lot about this recently. Not because it was actually unrelated. Something else. I've been I self-reflect a lot on to try and again understand myself to be a better person, really. And I was trying to understand. Actually, I was having this conversation with my mum of all people, and I was telling her I was really, really anxious about doing this talk in front of 300, 400 people. And she just was like, why are you doing this to yourself? Why are you...
The protective mama, right?
Yeah. She's like, why are you doing this to yourself? And I think the thing for me is I'm a fighter. If I see injustice, if I see something I don't agree with, if I think you're treating someone unfairly, I can't keep my mouth shut. Like, I will say something. And then that's when I get more anxious afterwards, because then I go, oh my God, did I say something wrong? Or, did I offend someone? All of that sort of stuff. But because we had that conversation, and I didn't even realize it till after I'd said it to her and I thought more about it. I said to her, either I have to accept that this is my life now, that this is the job I'm doing until I retire, that this is how it's going to be, that these are the people I'll be working with, this is the situation, or I fight through it. And because I'm a fighter, and I think one of my core values is a fighter, it's like I don't have the flight response or the freeze response. I will fight, like I will defend myself. And obviously that can have its downsides, but I think for me, I'm very fortunate because I have that core value, and it is so strong in me because I want to help people, because that's also so strong. And because those two combine, it's like my super strength, because even though I don't want to do it and I'm absolutely terrified and I don't know what's going to happen, I asked myself, well, what if you don't do it? Like, it's the whole reason I came to the UK was because I thought it, and I went, oh, I could just do this random journey that, would be really risky and whatever else. But I was like, well, what if I don't do it? What will I miss out on? And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of things I've failed at, but at least I know that, well, I tried it. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
I answered that what if. And because I have that fight, and because I don't want to accept this, how it is now, I cannot, I said that to Mum, I said, I cannot accept that this is, I have to accept it. If this is how it is going to be, if I'm not going to push myself, I have to accept this. And I said, I cannot accept that I can just do this every day. I will just be miserable. I need to be able to do those other things. So, as much as I'm absolutely mortified, and terrified, even for the next things that are coming in the next couple of months, I'm absolutely just scared out of my brain that this, what's going to happen. I equally know I'm really ready for it. And I equally know that I need to take that leap. Because what if I don't, and again, I cannot accept that this is the job. This is how it is. I want to be doing more. I want to be doing the things I'm passionate about. And so, having that and understanding that driver, and then I've really worked hard on the last couple of years, rebuilding in effect the right support network, because I did kind of have one, but people move on, people change, and again, I think that's definitely what was another thing that made me fall into the realm that I fell into. And that's not by no means the people I had around me were wrong or, you just all move on. And when I really went to rebuild that, that support network, I've been very, I don't want to say careful because that's not the right word, but just very aware that I want to make sure I've got the right people for the longer term. And again, that I've been really upfront with how I'm feeling and, my triggers and, so that way, again, if I call you, you and I have talked so much about it. You just know when I call you and I need you to just tell me over the phone to get over myself and it's going to be fine. And I know that that's just what's going to happen. You know what I mean? So I think for the longevity, it's more, it's definitely just making sure I've got the right support, around me. Particularly because also I don't have my family here; they're all in Australia. So again, I'm very much on my own. Like it's all my own thing. So between those two things, it really is what drives and hopefully will protect me when I then have those moments of falling from grace and going, oh my God, I'm not good enough, and all of those all those things start to again try and take over.
It's implementing everything you've learned, all those tools, techniques to kind of take you forward to that resilience to bounce back from any sort of rejections, whatever it is. And what you said is really poignant, I think, to seek a meaningful, joyful, happy life means that it can be challenging, right? It is challenging, right? But that's a beautiful thing about it, because you're pushing yourself. It might not be easy, but you'll find that meaning and value in your life, which is so important.
And the other thing I'd say is, I've tried many things, even in just the last 2 years, between my physical health and my mental health both needing to be rebuilt in effect. I've talked about the things that worked. Imagine all the things that are littered as failures of not working, but just because they worked for me doesn't mean it didn't work for someone else, and that's why I tried it, because I went, well, they've seemed to have found success. Let me see if it's something that will suit me and work for me. And that's the other thing all about it is, you just, and I also know that things that work for me now probably won't work in 3 or 4 years' time, because I'll be a different person. You know what I mean? We're always growing and evolving. So, even now I'm still looking for the things that I need to change, or try, just to keep myself on that edge of, pushing myself, but equally keeping that toolbox in effect that I have of all the things that I do refreshed and up to date. Even your first aid kit, you get a first aid kit that has an expiration date on it. All of that stuff in there for your physical health has an expiration date. Your mental health, first aid kit, is no different. So you've got to be constantly, updating it and checking in with it and making sure that all those things that you've got on hand are working. And if not, what else can you chuck in there? It's like delivery, people throw out new templates and I'll always take them. If someone's using something I've never seen, even if I'll never use it, I take it, because I go, well, what if that could become in handy? And again, my mental health, there are things I see people do and I go, oh, I'll log that as a potential thing that maybe I can try down the road. And whether I use it or not, I don't know, but it's there. I've got it.
It's there. It's part of your toolkit, basically, that you have, right? Which is amazing. I think that everyone listening will find this so incredibly helpful, because you've given so many tips, tools, techniques to use and shared your own experience. I know people can relate to that as well, especially when it comes to anxiety. So how can people connect with you?
I always say LinkedIn. To start with. I'm always happy to talk about things, or if people just want to reach out and say hello. So LinkedIn's always the best place. I have been asked that a few times, so I might find something else to eventually offer as a alternative, but for now LinkedIn is the best place.
Great. So if you want to get in touch with Gill Bennett, it's LinkedIn. Look her up, have a chat with her. She's amazing.
Can't miss me.
And Gill, Gill, it's been so amazing to have you on the Power Within You podcast today. Thank you for sharing your experience, your journey, and your tools.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.